Hello everyone, welcome back to episode 2 of the North Pole series that I'm doing on the channel. Before we get started today, I want to explain a little bit more on what this series is going to be about. Obviously, we're making a theme park in Planet Coaster, and it's going to be 10 episodes. Each episode is going to be specifically structured around a certain aspect of the park. Now, I do this just so that way it doesn't, because a lot of times with parks, you can kind of get overwhelmed with how much you're wanting to do, so I like to just concentrate on one thing, get that one thing done for the whole time. Makes it a little bit more simpler to deal with and manage. So the first episode, obviously what we did was we did the entrance part where the guests could spawn and actually could enter the park. This episode we're focusing on the train, and we're going to be doing everything retaining to what the train is. This includes the train station, the route that it's going to take, and also the details along the way. We won't do all the details because those will come for future projects in the park when we make more buildings up on top on the actual North Pole. So first thing, as always, had to figure out what the structure of the building was going to look like, just get the general shape of it. I did look up a few Google reference images of what some train stations were just to get some inspiration. So I ended up settling on this shape you see here, and then the pathing that I did was temporary, just kind of, again, to get an idea of how big I did want this in order to have a decent sized queue within the building. So I did start trying to work out the roof as well, which roofs are always quite difficult in Planet Coaster just because you do have a limited amount of pieces limited pieces, but I did choose a roof style that had decent, so you might have saw I did have to change that a little bit just because I realized it wasn't going to work in the structure that I had, but I do actually like this method better. I think it looks a little bit better, gives the roof a little bit more depth. I also use these overhangs, which I do enjoy as well. Once I finished doing all the structure of the building, obviously I was starting to do the details, so I started putting the windows, just the usual stuff I did on both the entrance and the buildings in the previous episode. And that's just kind of the same stuff as last time, so I won't talk too much about it. But one thing I did do differently here, just to kind of make things go a little bit quicker, was eventually I'll just be working on the left side of the building with those 4 windows there, and that'll just be, I'll do everything on that side and just copy it right over to the right hand side, so that way I didn't have to be doing things twice in order to make it go a little bit quicker. And I'll stop talking now, and you guys can just vibe to the Planet Coaster music and enjoy the time lapse. Alright, so I'm going to skip over the showing you guys the detailing on the sides and just briefly the detailing on the back, just in order to save some time so that way this video is not too long. But once I finished this, I had this idea for the train station. Most coaster tracks, what you do for train stations, flat rides, coasters, you have the track and you can either make like a little canopy or you put it into a building. I wanted to do something a little bit different here. So you can see I made a few extra tracks because most train stations have multiple platforms. So that's kind of what I wanted to try to replicate here. I did want to switch out the floor just so I can make it consistent throughout all of the out of all of the platforms. So I ended up using this little cement looking brick, which looks really nice in my opinion. I just copied that around for all of the platforms. Then I will detail them a little bit later. I did have to make them a little bit wider just in order to make the dimensions look proper. But after I finished that, I did start constructing a little awning or a roof for the platform to give the guests some shade and protection. I just want to have a little bit of gap to let some sunlight in, also for the train exhaust to kind of like escape through the roof. And I just kind of use the same techniques I did for the other buildings of using the posts, the snow, just kind of keep it. I did use a different color for the roof just to give it a little bit of resemblance that this is a different type of building. And then just detailed everything, making sure safety was kind of a concern, adding some fencing, some yellow lines for the guests to stay behind. And I did have to do a little bit of adjusting with the textures because the parts in Planet Coaster occasionally will try to compete for which texture is on top depending on how you position stuff. So you just gotta exit, or if they're grid based, just separate them from the building so you can move them individually, and then that should fix the problems. If you guys are Planet Coasters players yourself, then that is a good tip for you. A few more details on the roof, including the snow and little trim. Once I did that, I believe, a little bit more Christmas details, and I also wanted to have benches for the guests to sit in. Now, Planet Coaster has a whole bunch of kind of path extras for that, but you actually have to put them on a path, and because these aren't paths, I couldn't even put it on the train station. I ended up having to build my own custom benches, which I actually really like the way that they turned out. I think they look very cool. I don't know if they'd be the most comfortable things, but they at least look the part. Also grabbed some TMTK trash cans, recolor them to fit the theme, and just put them all around to make the platform seem a little bit more complete. And all in all, I really enjoy the way that this station turned out. I was very happy with. I think I executed my idea of making multiple platforms pretty well. So I may add this a little bit on the front as well, but just added some train station specific features like the clocks just to make sure people would never miss their trains. Right, and next thing we're gonna do is start making the actual train track. Now the way that I wanted this to do, obviously the North Pole is gonna be on top of that big platform that I made in the first episode. This is just kind of like the base camp area where guests come and then they take the train to get to the North Pole. So I had it weaving around all the way to the side, and then I did leave this hill blank on purpose, and you'll kind of see why as this video moves on a little bit, but trust me, it'll make sense later. I'm gonna have two stations up here. I'm just gonna copy and paste the stations with a few changes from the one at the bottom. There's one here kind of right as you exit, and then one on the other side of the little river we have going on there. And unfortunately, when I was trying to get all the, because right now I just have it going through the terrain in order to get it to a actual tunnel in the hill, I did try to just smooth everything, and that ended up crashing the game, and I lost half the work, which kind of sucks. But it wasn't too bad to redo because it was not the most complicated thing in the world. So just redid that, and once I had the smoothing, or once I had the tunnels laid out, then I could start working on the details. And here's the start of one of the details. I wanted the tunnels to be have some fun elements in them. The idea I had here, I just really like the idea of having the coaster, or not the coaster, this is a train. The train going through the mountain in a tunnel, and occasionally you peep out onto the side and you can kind of see how tall you are. So like this first layer you're at a certain height, and then the next layer you're even higher, you can see you're gaining elevation. And just kind of, eventually I'll put some ice spikes there to kind of give it a little bit more, a little bit more detail. And also wanted to kind of replicate what trains in the real world are on, like the gravel patches. So I just raised the terrain a little bit around it and painted it with a rock texture within the game to make that look a little bit better. Then I just copied and pasted the train stations, as I said, and I did change them. This first platform I changed to 2, and then this second one I changed to 3, or not 3, sorry, only 1 platform. Once I was done, started really putting the details around the track. This I just wanted to have a really dense forest on the other side of the bridge after you go across the waterfall. And I did put some stumps there as well, kind of like the train, in order to get the train to go through there. I guess the railroad company had to chop down some trees, so I think that gives a little bit of realism. Now what you can see on the screen is me working on the caves on both sides of the going up and down part of the track. I made a bigger hole on the sides to have the trains go through, and because I did just want to have a dark hole the entire time. So my idea here was to put some crystals in the cave, and then I'll recolor them in a second. But this is actually where I got the idea of having a pretty cool lore aspect of the park. Eventually what I'll be evolving throughout the entire park as well is these crystals, and what these crystals are going to do, each color represents a different power, or it has a different power or different property that the North Pole can use in order to do its magic. And the thing is that these crystals are only indigenous to the, I don't know if that's the right word, but they're only found in the North Pole, so which makes sense why you'd be going through the caves. As you're going up to them, you can see these crystals, which I guess the elves would mine and kind of harvest for their use. Now you can kind of see it's a little bit dark because there's no light in here, just the crystals, which still looks pretty cool, but if I was on the train, I think I'd be pretty terrified in this situation. So what I started doing was adding some colors of floodlights that matched the color of the crystals, and the end result was pretty cool. Now I did this for both this tunnel and the other side tunnel, which is a little bit bigger than this. And the tunnel above this one, I did put some crystals, but also a little surprise, so stick around to the end of the video for the train POV to check out what that is. Alright, and here's me adding the ice spikes. I am calling them ice spikes, but again, they are the frosting ones. And I did try really hard to not make it look repetitive. Originally I was thinking, oh, maybe I can just put them every here and there, but I ended up just going along the entire line just because it did end up looking better instead of having those patches of holes. So just alternated like pretty much every single spike to make it not look too repetitive, angled them slightly differently. So for the top part, I didn't quite like how it looked, so I did start covering them up with the rocks. I ended up choosing the smaller rocks just because I thought it looked a little bit better than the big rocks peeking out of the ground as well. It just kind of gave a little bit more of an ice cave look. And then started putting around some trees in order to get the wall a little bit more, make the hill look a little bit more full. And I was just lazy and just copied the whole ice spikes to the top part as well, make it a little bit easier on myself. And with that is pretty much the train entirely done. I will let you guys enjoy some B-roll and the POV of the train. Enjoy!
Lots of toys, all for the little ones' Christmas joys. Ho, 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 who wouldn't go? Ho, 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 who wouldn't go? Up on the housetop, tick, 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 down through the chimney with good Saint Nick.
Alright, and as we pull into the final station, that is going to be the end of this episode. Hope you guys enjoyed watching this video. I had a ton of fun making it. It was a lot of work, but I really love how everything turned out. Next time, we're going to be working on a whole bunch of buildings, completing the bottom area and starting on the top. See you guys then. Bye!